Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the HMGS No Dice, No Glory Roundtable. And today we have a treat, and it's a treat for me. May not be for any of you, but I am with one of my favorite podcasters, and overall one of my favorite Marines, uh, Doug from Lead Pursuit Podcast. How you doing today, Doug?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
By the way, happy birthday. It's 245 years, right?
Exactly. 245 years young.
Yeah. So cheers to the United States Marine Corps. So Doug is here to talk to us about some stuff that I got swept up with you using Tabletop Simulator and really kind of closing the divide that we've had with COVID. Sure. So I find it interesting. So I am going to let you have the floor, sir.
Well, you should know better than to do that because
I do.
Being a former fighter wizzo, I will not turn the microphone nor the pens back over to you. So most everybody should know me. And if you don't, there's not much to know other than I'm a former retired United States Marine, flew F-18s for more than a year or two, and am part of the Lead Pursuit podcast with a bunch of other miscreants, most of whom are veterans, where we talk about things aerial wargaming. For that, we can all blame John Russell, the pusher, if you know him from Warlord Games, for suckering us into Blood Red Skies, which kind of got me back into aerial wargaming other than science fiction, and really kind of pulling back into a lot of the things I'd done in my childhood, in my teens, with board war games and historical miniature war games. So,
you know, those guys are on for 3 hours tomorrow, by the way.
I'm only going to watch an hour of it. I'm going to skip the first and last hour. I love them like brothers, and I told them, I said, there's no way I can take 3 hours of you guys. So if you do want to find about Blood Red Skies stuff, I believe that's the middle hour, 11 o'clock, I think is when Andy's supposed to be on that. So there's my plug for that. Please go listen if you care about that. I think it's Bolt Action before and Black Seas after, something like that.
Yes.
But I don't care about either of those two games. I got problems with aerial war games. So how did we end up doing things for something digital? So as COVID hit, we all looked at each other and said, well, crap, we'd never played Blood Red Skies enough anyway. Now might be the time to make a transition. And my problem is the last time I coded anything for a computer, I think I used Fortran. Maybe I used something high speed and it was Lisp or Pascal or some other language. So writing a game from scratch was not going to happen. I also have tried to use Vassal, and because I'm a Marine, I can't count to 10 without taking my boots off. I really have no way of generating something for Vassal that would be that useful. And the good thing is Brett's just joining us. So the other part of Lead Pursuit Podcast. Glad you can make it, Brett. Sorry that we started without you. Honest, I love you like a brother.
There he is. Were you talking shit the whole time or what?
We were. I see you have your corporate background up, you know?
Yeah, hold on. Let me change that.
You don't have to be a corporate guy today. You can be like the rest of us.
Do you work for Johnson & Johnson?
I do.
He's known to hang out with a lot of Johnsons. So
yeah. We'll talk later on. My wife does your mental health.
So what we ended up doing is we said we need a tool to be able to play Blood Red Skies remotely without having to actually be in the same room with each other. And we need something that's easy for a knuckle dragger like Doug to actually do the coding and the building for. So enter Tabletop Simulator on Steam. And if anyone in this group is not familiar with Tabletop Simulator, I understand some people do still live under a rock and haven't heard about it. It is basically a sandbox that's out there where you create your own game pieces, create what you want your dice to look like, create your maps, your tokens, everything. And it all obeys the laws of physics, sort of, however you choose to define the laws of physics. You can turn off gravity, you can make gravity heavier, whatever, so your dice roll further, roll less. But it's an opportunity to build from the ground up a war game or a card game or a board game. And it works great, especially in a miniatures-based game, because then you can make little airplanes on little stands and you can move them around just like you were doing it on the table in front of you. Now, Brett came into this, and Brett, let's talk about yourself here in a second. As one of the members of the Lead Pursuit podcast, as I started building this, I said, "Hey, Brett, let's play this crazy thing that I built on Tabletop Sim." But he even took it in a different direction because I had just been using it to play one-off games of Tabletop Sim, and Brett came into this really to do more campaign games and to have a continuous storyline that he and Steve, one of the other members of the podcast, were working on. So once we created this strange construct, we kind of realized it's getting the genie out of the bottle at some point. You're like, now I can do everything I could physically do in a game. Oh crap, there's a lot of really cool things you can do. So, for me, it was great to just test rules or just test individual cards for aircraft, stat lines. For Brett, it was great to do campaign work and to work out a whole new campaign system. So I think there were a lot of neat things that we found out we could do with it as we kind of dug into, once you've built Blood Red Skies and Tabletop Sim, what are all the things you want to do with it?
Yeah, TTS is really the reason why that whole campaign system we're working on evolved. It wasn't a thing. Steve and I just started playing one-off games, and quickly we're like, you know what? There's that Sandstorm thing. You want to try to just play some continuous games using those rules. And we use TTS as a way to do that. He lives in Pennsylvania. I live in Florida. And we started playing that way and quickly started saying, hey, that was kind of cool, but we need to add this component to it. Hey, Andy has these campaign rules. Why don't we incorporate some of those? And anyway, long story short, we ended up with a ream of photocopies that are all stapled together with sticky notes all over them because we hand jammed maybe 3 different systems together into one kind of system that worked for us. And then after the first virtual gathering of Eagles, Doug's like, hey, why don't you codify that into an actual thing that we can share with others? So we've been busy working on that and may have something very soon to share with folks. But that all came from screwing around on TTS. That's purely.
I'm gonna cite you guys for speeding because you blew over something that I understand that you may know these other 6 guys that are here, but when this goes out on YouTube, people may not. But in between meeting John Russell and playing on TTS, you guys started something that I think is really great, and you should at least mention it.
It's horrible. It's the worst thing to happen to my life in the last year and a half.
That I can believe.
Whose idea was that anyway?
Yeah. If I find that jerk, I'm going to punch him in the face.
You should.
So yeah, we came back from Adepticon 2019. And we had just bought Blood Red Skies, miniatures, box sets. I think we split a box set between Brett and I. And some jerk who is also sitting here in this room, not me, says, hey, I've got a great idea. Why don't we do a podcast about this game we just bought and played once? So because I can never say no to a good idea, we started the Lead Pursuit podcast, which we knew initially was going to grow beyond Blood Red Skies, but we started and said, all right, we'll do the Lead Pursuit podcast. We'll talk about mostly Blood Red Skies and some other aerial wargaming and other hobby gaming history kind of things. And so since last summer, we've been flapping our gums generally about once a week or so. We drop an episode talking about aerial wargaming, delving into Blood Red Skies, and now we branched out to talk about some things that are on Kickstarter. Not everybody has an army of unboxers and evaluators that they have sent stuff to. And so sometimes there's some pretty cool things out there in Kickstarter that aren't getting the press you want. And so you want to feature them. You want to be the podcast that says, hey, everybody go take a look at this game. Maybe it's for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's too complex. Maybe it's too simple, but you probably haven't heard about it. So we're going to talk about it. And then
I like to add something. You guys are a little bit too modest. One is, and you really are. You guys do a weekly show on a single game.
Yes.
I don't know how anybody does that. Nobody else really does that. Even games like Squad Leader. And I bring it up because I know Doug's stomach turns when I say that. You run out of stuff to talk about. You guys haven't. And I will say something that I think should be obvious to everybody in the community is I look at the North American community. And I think people are playing Blood Red Skies because of the excitement you guys have in that podcast. Because anytime I've gone to a game store, which hasn't been recently lately, and I see guys playing it, they mention you guys. I feel like the excitement you guys put in the game is the reason why, out of Black Sails or Black Seas, the Torpedo Boat one, but Blood Red Skies seems to have a big following, so much so that I can't find airplanes.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah. So I think that you guys really should, I don't know, not be so modest. But it's the excitement you guys have now, and you guys have a lot of episodes out there.
Right. We just dropped episode 54 today. So, and that's
I think we have a lot of legs too, because we've talked a lot behind the scenes about things we want to talk about. I mean, we kind of just started getting a little bit into tactics. We dropped a card episode where we talk about card mechanics a little bit in the game. But I mean, think about this. We could do, this is something I actually really would enjoy doing, even if it was just a portion of an episode, would be to take like one airplane, right? Focke-Wulf 190, whatever. That one model. And just rated
G. It's rated G.
Well, we'll start with Luftwaffe aircraft because everybody knows they're the best.
All right.
So anyway, the idea, could be just take one airplane that everybody adores and loves and talk about how they play and the cards and stuff that maybe make them work best. And, all that. There's so much you could talk about because we love this game. And that's just one little thing, right?
And Brett really has hit on the fact that once you enjoy playing a game, and I'll tie this back to TTS here in a second, you really start getting into more than just the, hey, I want to play and I want to do well. You're like, I want to understand how this game actually works. I want to understand why the Focke-Wulf 190 actually is better than the BF 109. What is it about the stats? Is it just because it has more firepower? Things like that.
I would like to make an admission to you that in a lot of your first episodes, I started realizing I was interpreting the rules wrong.
So I think there's a few errata that need to go out for our early episodes as well.
Yeah, and you guys figured it out. And I was driving up the Connections last summer, and I brought Mig Alley with me because I figured that'd be cool. It was the new hotness. Actually, it wasn't even out yet. And I'm like, I've been playing this game wrong. Okay, so you guys saved me from a lot of embarrassment.
Well, that's why I like doing demo games, because you want to learn how to know the rules in and out of a game and be called on them constantly. Do demo games, and Brett and I have done that a couple times where we've found ourselves going, let me make sure I really understand how this rule is written so I can teach it appropriately. But that's a lot of fun. And those are the things that we hope come back here in another 6 months or a year, that we can get back some of the larger events and start doing demo games and bigger shows.
So getting you guys back on track.
This guy is a machine on rules too. I may now have played more games, at least on TTS, than Doug, but he knows the rules better than anybody I know. So.
Best rules lawyer ever, at least in my own mind.
You know what? This is something about this game and this endeavor with the podcast that I was thinking about because of something you said. When it started out, I was just super geeked over things I was learning as I was playing the game, because it was forcing me to read books and historical documents and stuff like that I never would have
reading.
Yeah, right. There was that was actually happening. So I was reading these stories and other things. I was like, man, this is super cool. I never knew this about this airplane or this crazy story about this particular battle. Anyway, and I remember saying on one of our episodes, if our thing that we share on the podcast gives somebody the same thing, right? If somebody listens to a podcast and says, man, I want to go check that out. If that happened one time, win, right? But now I'm learning so much more about the game and stuff as I'm doing this campaign thing with Steve. And now talking about, like, I'm having these epiphanies like, oh man, if you put these cards together, it does this. These little, now I want to make sure people are coming away with those kind of learnings as well. So all we're doing is sharing the Geek Fest that we're having ourselves as we play the game, just sharing it. That's all we're doing.
Well, one of the best comments was made by the crew over at the Anything But a One podcast. And they were talking about specifically Warlord games. And they said, the Warlord games aren't rivet counter games. They're not grognard games. They're not, super deeply historical. But what they are is they're an entryway into the history because they're fun. And you enjoy playing the game. And then all of a sudden you find yourself either playing a scenario or fielding a unit or something that you don't know a whole lot about, and you go out there and you nerd out on it. You go read up on it and you study it. And at the end of the day, it isn't this vast sum of knowledge that you're bringing into the game. It's you're playing the game and you're going and building your knowledge out of that. And it was an interesting way of looking at a war game that was different for me because I was a squad leader, advanced squad leader, Panzer Blitz kind of guy, rivet counter, yes. But it's something that's really unique to Warlord games in that way, that they're not super detailed, super historical.
And another thing we were speeding on, in case anybody needs to know, Blood Red Skies is a tactical aviation game that takes place in primarily World War II. It is expanded to Korean War Jet Age, and it may expand beyond that, but we'll talk about that later. So I think it's a great game. And, I've mentioned this privately, and I'll say it now, because I guess if they want to yell at me, they can yell at me tomorrow. I think the reason why the game's popular here in North America is really due to you guys. So
I appreciate that.
They should name one of the pilots after each of you.
No, because they can't put those kind of words onto podcasts or onto cards.
They cannot.
They can make how they have the little ace figurines? They can make a little 28 millimeter ace figure that has an ass that looks like a bag of rabbits. Doug Glover.
And that would be what, Doug or you, Brad?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I'm chiseled steel, man.
Exactly.
And sex appeal.
That's
he was
right.
at one point. All right, so getting back to what we really should be talking about.
There you go.
Back to Tabletop Sim. So
I did ask you for your questions, your notes, and you sent it to me, and I want to make sure that you somewhat stick to them. But the three of us can ad lib really, and this is a 2-hour session.
Yeah. I guess I probably need another beer at this.
I've always been good at breaking stuff. They just kind of point me towards the bad guys.
That's right.
Exactly. Just give him the rough idea where to go.
All right, so we're back on track. No more speeding.
No more speeding. We'll cover everything in order the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing I did want to talk about is, before we talk about all the things you can do, before we go into some really detail on that, I think there's a little bit of legal and internet history that people need to understand. And this is something that I feel a lot of gamers don't appreciate and they don't always think out, because we tend to see one of two reactions on the internet for gamers. Either they're a fanboy or they hate a game. And there's very little in between. And there's very little in between, especially when companies make decisions. And so when you go and you go to a company and you say, hey, I want to take your IP, your cards, your counters, your tokens, and to put them in a game that people will play for free, there's a lot of legal baggage that goes with that. And so that was an interesting part of this. Just jump on doing Tabletop Sim and do it in a vacuum and say, we don't care what Warlord says. We're going to put everything out there. We knew they had legal rights to this stuff. And so we tried to be good stewards as part of the game community and say, okay, Warlord, okay, Andy Chambers, we think this is a good thing. Will you support it? And so one of the delays to fielding it initially was getting Warlord and Andy on board, because Andy's not a super digital gaming kind of guy. And Warlord is definitely not a digital IP understanding company. They just don't have digital IP. They're not like Games Workshop, who lives half their life in the digital IP world. So there was a lot of negotiation. I know a lot of people that initially asked, well, why didn't you just release all the cards, all the airplanes, all the information? Because we couldn't, because Warlord wouldn't let us. And that's their decision to have. That's their decision to make. And all we can do is say, okay, I understand that. I appreciate that. I'll respect that decision. That doesn't stop people from still playing Tabletop Sim with their copy of a Corsair card sitting next to the table. It doesn't stop them from having their ace card there to reference. So people still need to understand that it's a virtual representation of your tabletop. You're not, no one is going to say you can't use the cards you already have. They just may not digitally be there, because Warlord, to be honest, they were a little concerned. They were kind of concerned what we were doing might take away from physical model sales, which we'll come back to talking about that fallacy and that line of thinking. But they said, okay, just release what's in the starter box, release those models, those cards. And I'll be honest, we took a little bit of liberty when they said cards. We're like, if it's a card that's ever shown up in a starter box of any kind, that'll go out there. I don't know if it's in my starter box, but we put those cards out, and we really tried to keep things inside the bounds of what Warlord wanted. We didn't put out a list of scenarios. We didn't put out the expanded rules because you can't get those for free on the internet. You can download the basic game rules. So we really tried to play well inside what Warlord wanted us to do, because we felt if we started off at the beginning, thumbing our nose at Warlord, they definitely weren't going to support it, and we probably were going to put some kind of a cease and desist, whether it was enforceable or not. We were going to end up with a cease and desist, and we don't want to be those guys. There's no point to burning that bridge early. But what we have gone through and have found out is there is a limit to what Warlord's comfortable with. We keep trying to push up against it, and we keep trying to talk to Andy and convince him to work on Warlord. And it's a continual negotiation. So where is Tabletop Sim going? I don't know. I doubt we will ever have all of the cards from Warlord games on there. But what I'll tell people is, what you choose to do in your own house, playing Tabletop Sim, if you scan and digitize your own card and use that when you're just playing your buddies, that's very different than us at Lead Pursuit putting that card out for everybody. So I know there's a lot of aircraft cards and trait cards and ace cards that Steve and Brett play with that are not in the starter, but that's because they are just using IP that they have purchased and that they are in possession of, and they have just created a digital reference basically for it. So all those disclaimers out. There's a long road to a short answer. But so once we had this creation, we had something that we could play starter set battles. People could play their own, their own battles with their own aircraft that they wanted. We also found ourselves playtesting because, like you brought up, there's a follow-on set of rules that's going on out there. And my initial frustration was every rules change that came out, every good idea, as we were writing more rules for Blood Red Skies to present to Andy, because once again, there are good ideas. It's Andy's game, so rules don't go straight from Doug Glover's pen to the next revision of whatever is going to be in Blood Red Skies. It's a proposal to Andy. But we found that we didn't have to rely on playtesters to meet every week or every month, or you didn't have to get on the playtesters and say, hey, you guys haven't played in a week, because you could say, everyone wants to meet in Tabletop Sim tonight. We'll show you the new rules, show you the new cards, make our comments, let's play a game or two. And it really sped up the playtest cycle, which is good and bad. You might believe that if we sped the playtest cycle, we would have a finished set of Vietnam rules that we're ready to push out there. Mitch, I think you know the answer to that is no. Brett, you were in on the presentation to Andy. You definitely know the answer is no. So it's both a help in the way that it speeds up your cycle, but then it's also a great way for the game designer to look at it and go, what the heck were you people doing? No, that's not what I said. So you throw up your hands, you go back to square one, you start writing again.
What were you doing?
Yeah, well, exactly. And there was a point where I was like, I apparently didn't have enough of this.
Well, one of the things you and I did talk about is that I've play tested a lot of games, and I have to go find people that I don't know. You go up to people in a dark alleyway. Hey man, you want to play some games?
Just a game. Got a couple games here.
Yeah, but I noticed like clusters of players, and this is from being on tournament scenes for a lot of games. Like all the guys in a particular geographic area that play in 2 or 3 stores all play the game the wrong way, the same way.
Correct. Absolutely.
And what I think that this does is it gets you to kind of expand that a little bit. And I'll give you a thing. Right after you got me into TTS, I played Mark Goddard from Breakthrough Assault, which is a Flames of War page in England. And I realized they play a little differently there of how they interpret the rules. Their playing style's different too. Yeah. He was very aggressive. You heard the term, some countries are power gamers, right? Where they min-maxing's different. What I kind of liked about this is you're getting feedback from a wider audience. I think it ends up making a better game.
It does, and so I'll air some of the dirty laundry of the play test here. Is that
love dirty laundry?
well, early on we had 2 teams. We had a UK and a US team. because we were not just people separated by a common language. We were people that were separated by two different visions of what we thought should be proposed to Andy. And that's how playtest teams work. That's how any committee works. At some point, people think things are so important that lines have to be drawn. People have to go off in the corners, go plan, come back with a finished product. But we had to do that just because of personalities. Well, the nice thing was that sometimes there were disagreeing or dissenting members on the other playtest team. So we weren't geographically limited. We were able to say, okay, we have a dissenter on the UK playtest team. We can invite them over to play our games. And we're getting a UK perspective because he's playing the game very much the way the rest of the UK guys are. And he's coming at it as an experienced game designer, playing the game differently than I play as someone who's, like contributed to one game being designed. So it was useful because you found a lot of the fallacies in your own thinking and a lot of the assumptions. And then when they showed up and did something different than everybody else you played in the United States, you're like, I didn't account for that in the rules. So it was definitely a good opportunity for a lot of that work.
Kind of escape that curse of knowledge when you're just too close to the thing and you got to let somebody else look at it. Steve and I have done that a lot on our campaign work where, we'll kind of get stumped, and instead of trying to burn too many brain cells trying to solve it ourselves, we'll go to somebody we think is an expert who does not know the system intentionally and
blind play testing.
Yeah. My son was just photobombing me.
And it's actually kind of cool if you get a real blind person.
Yeah, that doesn't work so well. It's strange.
Yeah, doesn't work.
Not with a video game. All right, so let's talk about a couple other things. We talked about the playtesting. We hinted around the fact that we used it for Vietnam era. One of the other interesting side effects is because tabletop sim is a sandbox. It is as accurate as you want to make it or as otherworldly as you want to make it. We found it interesting, or we validated a concept that we thought was going to be there, which was that at 1/200th scale, some of these jets are pretty darn big. And so when we would have scaled all the 3D models that we imported to the proper dimensions, we noticed how tiny our Spitfires were and how big our F4 Phantoms were, and then really how big the F105s were. And as we started playtesting this, we came to this discussion point of what size models do you use as you get into some of these more larger aircraft advanced eras. And it was useful that we got to that point here a year and a half before production, rather than, here's the first 1/200 scale F4s rolling off the mold line to be looked at, and suddenly realizing we had to change the aircraft scale. So it made for some interesting discussions. Don't think that we've picked any one scale for anything for Blood Red Skies Vietnam. There's a great circular discussion and argument going on inside Warlord itself, and then with Andy and some of the playtesters. We've recommended everything from 1/285th to 1/300th to going to a one-off size of 1/250th, just in a way to find what's right for a large jet battle rather than the World War II style battle. But it was something that came up from us playing it. We actually saw it in there in TTS before any one of us pushed a modern jet or a Vietnam era jet around a physical table. So that was quite useful. Okay, so let's see here. There's a few things that I kind of danced around, and I didn't cover a whole lot of.
You love the speed.
I do. So I was going to keep talking unless you want to ask me questions.
Well, let's. We got others here, and let's see if they put anything in chat. No, other than saying the guy in the middle picture should shut up.
Exactly. That guy should really shut up.
No, they really aren't. So let's go back to the game that you pulled you guys in first. What about there's been a lot of World War II air games that have come out. Wings of Glory is one of them. They've all failed. What about Blood Red Skies that drew you guys in? Because as we know, we have Check Your Six. We have Wings of Glory, I've already mentioned. There's a ton of World War II flying games out there, and they're all equally as unpopular.
And more coming out every day. I mean, I'm surprised. You sit there in the aerial war games group and a couple other gaming groups on Facebook, and you see more games of tactical size coming out. It feels like daily. People are constantly.
Yeah. Why has this game succeeded?
Because they package crack with every single box they send out, so we're all addicts.
Let me write that down.
No, we all have our own perceptions of what we want to get out of a game. And so I'll give my answer. Brett can give his answer. I think they might be a little different. The thing I like is it assumes your pilot knows what they're doing. You don't have to think pilot things. You don't have to speak pilot speak. You just have to say, I want to kill that guy. I want to make a compromise. I want to give up energy or give up altitude or give up whatever this nebulous advantage is because I want to go shoot that person. And then I don't have to think about Immelman's, high, low, all that stuff, power settings, etc. Brett, why do you like it?
I mean, I think it's an elegant rule set that a novice that just has an interest in cool World War II airplanes and wants to make pew pew noises can do that and still have there's a depth to it that you can get, where there's, you start incorporating the card mechanic and some real tactics and some real thought processes. So it has a lot of depth, but it's also pretty fun from just like my 10-year-old wants to put planes on the table and we can actually do something with them and have a good time.
Right.
So
when you guys do that, who wins?
Oh, he always wins. Let the Wookiee win, right?
Yeah. Oh, I remember when I taught my son X-Wing, he kicked my ass. We've never played it since, nor will we ever.
Exactly. You played it once, you put it away. You're like,
excellent. We'll ever play it again.
I have to give a caveat. I have no real game experience outside of maybe 40K, some 30K. I've never played, Wings of Glory. I've never played a lot of board games. I haven't played X-Wing. So, I don't know what to compare it to.
We need to get you out of the house, brother.
Yeah. But I got crazy with the painting and I like the plane. So that was a start. And then the game is just fun, and it can get really granular if you want it to be, right? And so as I feel like as I'm playing along, I'm learning more. I'm getting my favorite planes and my favorite tactics and my own sort of style of play. All that's there, and it's not crazy like crazy bookkeeping or even in our campaign system. Although that's there's a lot going on. It's like D&D with World War II planes. It's not. I don't know. I'm not referring to like missile charts and I don't know.
Not yet.
I don't know what kind of stuff you might get into in some of these other more complicated games, but it's not that for me. So
yeah, check your 6. It's not a bad game. It's just not fun. Or at least it's not fun for me. I mean, look, my thing about gaming is if it's your fun, enjoy it. I am not going to crap on your fun. So, there was a question that came up the other day. Somebody asked me, I'm just curious what you guys think of it. And it's more of the friendly, hospitable attitude of gamers. A lot of gamers are scared to try a new game or show up at a gathering of Eagles. And somebody asked me recently, well, do I need to paint the models? So what do you guys think of that? And I'm saying that because I know both of you guys are pretty good painters.
And we have totally opposite views of this. So I'll let Brett go first. Brett can be the guy.
I'm not a hard ass for that, but I like painting and I like to play on a table where the planes are well painted. They just look cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to shame anybody if they showed up and had, unpainted planes or something like that, especially if we were at a gathering of Eagles or people are traveling to come play the game. Maybe they haven't played a long time and they just got a box. They want to play. Let's do this. It's fun. So I don't know. I haven't detected any like real crazy, paint shaming or anything. And I certainly wouldn't participate in any of that.
There's a few people out there, I think, that feel that way. But I'll be honest, I think in the Blood Red Skies community, they are a minority, or they are an exception to the rule in the sense that they say, hey, you know what? I always play with painted aircraft, or when we do a tournament, we always do painted aircraft. But hey, if you're gonna go play a friendly game, do whatever you want. I think most people fall into that kind of a category. And part of that's because the planes are so easy to paint.
Quick, yeah.
Scale. They paint fast, even for a slow painter like me. So it's one of those things where my attitude is I don't care. Heck, I'm the guy that'll go buy a box from John over at his Warlord table and crack them open and play with the not even primered airplanes.
Doug is a Renaissance man. When he does paint, I'm like, all 6 of his planes are like from a different country, different markings on them.
They are. I hate repetitive paint jobs, and it comes from being a 40K guy. I am tired of painting an entire Space Marine army in the same freaking paint scheme with like gold highlights on this guy and silver on that guy. Yeah.
So what's the craziest unit, the most obscure unit that I will find in your collection that you painted up?
Most obscure unit probably would be the Pakistani F-86s, because I haven't painted a single US F-86. All my F-86s are painted as Pakistani Air Force, because I'm like, who wants an F-86, Korean vintage? Brett, what about yours?
What's that? My craziest one?
Yeah.
I don't have any crazy one. I have all the 109s, like every 109 that Luftwaffe ever fielded. I think I have.
You wonder why you can't buy plastic 109s anymore? I think it's Brett. I think he bought all of them.
Is that where they went?
Yeah, that's where they went. Or they're in my closet here. So yeah, exactly.
Because they still only have the one F-109 model, right? It's the G or the E?
So no, they have released a resin G. So
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm the guy that. So I'll make some planes from Malta, knowing that, early on it was E's and, 109s are 109s, I guess. But then, later on there's some F's and they have a little bit different color scheme. So I got to make a whole new squadron because, I might sometime play that portion of our Malta campaign. So I'm going to have those planes on the shelf ready to go. Same thing with like the JU-88s or whatever. I like that. That's fun for me. So I have the crazy collection, like too many 110s and too many 109s.
And that's the thing I miss the most in tabletop sim, because it's just so hard to skin a model in there the way that we built them, that it's you really miss out on the paint jobs. And Brett teases me for my rainbow squadrons because I try to paint them up in pairs so that I'll have amongst my Wildcats there'll be 2 Marine Corps Wildcats, 2 Fleet Air Arm Wildcats, and 2 U.S. Navy Wildcats. But I don't care.
And there's somebody
different paint jobs.
There's somebody you have to give a shout out to that makes really good decal kits.
I don't know. I don't do decals. Do you do decals there, Brett? Who can we be talking about? Yeah, Kevin over at Miscellaneous Miniatures.
Who lives up the road.
Yeah, decal machine. Now, what I will say is, second to Kevin, the unheralded decal machine is Steve Toth, part of the Leap Pursuit podcast. Who doesn't even tell me he's making decals for people, his fellow podcast member. And all of a sudden somebody goes, hey man, I got some great decals from Steve. I'm like, dude, I need that same set. And he didn't even tell me he made those. So yeah, between Kevin and Steve, there's been some awesome decals. And there's a couple members of the community. So there's at least a couple people in Europe that have been doing custom decals. I know decal paper has kind of been the limiting factor for a lot of these guys recently. But yeah, there's some pretty cool work out there.
Evan's a champion. For a little while, I think at the beginning of this whole lockdown thing, I guess everybody was busy painting their models. He's like, hey guys, I'm good, man. I've got so much business going on right now. Right. But I emailed him just to check in, see how things are going. He's like, hey man, things are going pretty good. If you got any custom jobs you need me to do for you, let me know. So
I know better than to tell you that.
No, check this out. This is what Kevin will do. I sent him an email with an image that I found online of a flight manifest, a cargo manifest for the final 3 cargo aircraft that landed at Potomac. And they happen to be HE-111s. All I had from the manifest were the fuselage numbers, right? I sent him that. He makes a decal sheet for me with all the right numbers and right colors and all this other stuff. So that's the kind of thing. He's awesome. I love this guy.
And that's that airfield that was outside of Stalingrad for those.
Yeah, it's in the pocket. Yeah, in the pocket. Yeah.
But that's the whole Red Skies community. What I'll tell you is it's amazing to me. There was a while there that we were kind of stuck in a rut because we were the only people really doing cards for aircraft. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of other things I would rather do than make aircraft cards. But nobody else was making.
Yeah, sure about that.
Oh yeah, because I don't want to be there in PowerPoint, and I am a PowerPoint ranger, qualified DoD PowerPoint ranger, but I don't want to do that. I have a lot of other stuff I want to do. Fortunately, some members of the community stepped forward and have done a great job between Steve and a couple other guys making aircraft cards, ace cards. Chris Bergeron, one of the other members of our team does ace cards for us. So it's nice to have people that want to contribute and do things that are unofficial beta versions, whatever you want to call them, but the whole community benefits from. And
Yeah, you brought that up now twice, so I want to peel back the onion on this. That what I think has also been very successful in growing the game is that you have a developer that listens to you guys and really treats you guys, as part of the marketing arm. And then you have an active community where I don't go on the Ready Room a lot. I used to more. But you really have players there. They're very welcoming. Where I could tell you other games, not so much.
Yeah,
but that really helps out. Yeah, I mean,
it's huge, and I'll be honest, it only exists for, in my opinion, two reasons. One, because Ken Nat puts the effort in to make sure people feel.
Oh, poor Ken Nat, man. There's a special place in heaven for that
guy. Well, I don't know how he doesn't get tired of being the doorman, because that really, as he calls himself, the adjutant, but it's almost like being the doorman, welcoming everyone in. He does a great job doing that. And second of all, because those of us that, I won't say we're the leadership, because it's certainly not a tiered organization, but those of us that kind of see ourselves as the keeper of the community, we kind of police each other. And there's times any one of us gets off the reservation, let's say. I mean, whether it's me and Steve laying into Warlord about certain issues, and other people that are kind of community leadership will pull us aside and go, "Hey guys, don't bite the hand that feeds you. You piss Warlord off and it's not going to work out well for you." Or when other people get really frustrated about some pet rock of theirs, I don't want any non-historical aircraft in here or something like that. Taking them aside and going, "Hey, let's be a better community than a lot of other war games are." And it takes effort. It's, I would never want to compare it to a marriage, because my wife would probably divorce me then. But in a sense,
she hasn't up till now.
Yeah, exactly. She hasn't got rid of me yet. But maintaining a community is that same kind of effort, where you've got to have a little bit of compromise. You've got to look at where other people are coming from. And it goes back to the painted planes, unpainted planes, or if you're Steve Toth, planes with googly eyes pasted on there by your daughter.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. But it's building a community, because the point is, we're not all going to play the same way. We're not going to paint the same way. We're not going to game the same way. But by golly, let's at least enjoy hanging out with each other and talking about the game.
Totally agree with that. Geez, I had a question, and I was really going to look at your notes to make sure we're on track, and we are so far off. It's ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
Field chasing goats.
No, what I was going to say is sometimes war gamers ruin the game, and I could tell you where it's most acute is in naval wargaming.
Yeah.
You have rivet counters in that hobby, and there was a game I worked on, which is a gateway drug for naval gaming. Heart of Leviathan, made by another proud Alabamian. Is it Bamian or Bamian?
None of the above.
None of the above. And you have all these rivet heads, and I kind of gave them a dressing down. I go, the only thing I could tell you is the next 20 years, we're all going to die. And all these games that we love, that we think are the best, they're going to die with us. Yeah. And I started getting it was like a revolt against the graybeards. But you guys don't have that problem. You have a very committed community that helps grow the game. Let's talk about Gathering of Eagles.
Okay.
That you guys had. Now, you did an online one.
Correct.
And then you did one in person, I believe.
Correct. So
also known as Super Spreader 2020.
Yeah, exactly. Which is funny enough to say that. I mean, that's one of the things you have to take as a consideration these days, is that it is the era of COVID. And so if you do any event, you have to really dot your I's and cross your T's. And
it's true.
That was probably more stress to me than setting up the tournaments.
So let's since we want to talk about bridging the divide during COVID, let's talk about the one with the Malta campaign that I showed up for and watched. I tell you what, it was interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, so Virtual Gathering of Eagles, the first one that we did, we're going to do some more here soon. But the first one really came as an outgrowth of not being able to get together, not being able to plan to even get together, because every plan we tried to make was destroyed by federal, local, state guidelines from public health officials that were trying to keep us safe from ourselves.
They know how to kill a good time.
Those
A
guys
pandemic,
know how to
doesn't
ruin
it?
anything. I mean, heck.
Yeah.
But those rules put in place, we said we're going to follow them. We're not going to be there thumbing our nose at public health officials. Those just destroyed our ability to get together. So we said, what are we going to do? Let's jump onto Discord. Let's at least try to be somewhat social in a virtual way. And using our Gathering of Eagles server out there on Discord, we hosted a discussion with Andy. Brett and Chris did some great painting classes, and in fact, I had to pretty much drag the microphone away from Brett and say, "Stop teaching. I need to actually play a game."
My bad.
Which is what you want. I mean, you would rather have people that are giving too much content than people that you have to actually poke to get in front of the camera. But then we went out and we took an adaptation of the starter set, where we brought in the Malta map that we at the Lead Pursuit podcast had gone out and worked with a couple artists to create. Brought that in.
It was beautiful.
It's a gorgeous map, and it's gorgeous in person. I mean, you've got to see it when we do our next in-person gathering. Actually, you should. I guess we would have to ship a map up there, but I was going to say New Jersey, up at Mythicos Games. I'll make the plug now.
When is that?
So 5 December up in, and I'm going to get it wrong, Randolph, New Jersey. Mythicos Games, their store up there. They're going to do what we're going to call a fall flight Gathering of Eagles. It's not a full Gathering of Eagles, it's just a tournament. But it starts at 11 a.m. on the 5th, runs into the evening. And it's a good chance to in person get together and play a little Blood Reds, guys. 500-point game, pretty straightforward, pretty easy, and it should be a lot of fun. But
if there's not a crippling pandemic, I might head up there to check that out, because I need to see Mythicos.
Yes.
Eventually, before I die.
Yeah.
I tell you, that 500-point tournament format is so much fun. And anybody that's close by, if you've never played, it doesn't matter. Get your 6 planes or whatever, whatever your 500 points is, show up. It's super fun. And I mean, you bounce around different tables, stuff will change from table to table. It was a good time.
Yeah. And so the fact is, with the virtual Gathering of Eagles, we lumped a bunch of that stuff in and brought in the Malta map, so people could appreciate at least what we'd spent this money and designed, knowing that sure, if people want to buy one, they can always go out to the Lead Pursuit website. You can buy a big 4x8 map. Why did we do 4x8? It's a whole other story. Well, that's another podcast. But we did a really large map that is a lot of fun to play on. And we wanted to do the same thing virtually. So we're going to do that piece again, not for a virtual Gathering of Eagles, but with Texas Broadsides on the Board Game Geek at Home, their event that's coming up. We're going to go out there and do yet another Malta table and have a chance to play in tabletop sim with that cool map, with a bunch of different aircraft, and really, in a sense, just push the models around, just have a fun time. It's not a super intensive campaign game. It's not a super Rivet County who's going to win. We really don't care. Whoever gets boomed out gets boomed out.
Doug's like a year ago has had a book of Malta missions just for playing Blood Red Skies. That's why we have a Malta map. So are we going to get to dust some of those off at that event, you think?
I don't think we will, because we have a very short time window, and we're fit in between a couple other events.
We never even did it at the live Gathering of Eagles, because we were so busy doing other fun stuff. We just never even got to it. So those still have yet to see the light of day. They're amazing.
See the light of day, which is hilarious, because somebody asked me about them the other day, and I said, "Yeah, I've got pages of scenarios that are written up, and I'll point it out and everything." So
why Malta?
Why not Malta?
Because of airstrike, that's why.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. We said we needed to come up as the podcast with a scenario background that would support both air to air and air to ground, because airstrike was coming out.
And Battle of Britain just wasn't good enough.
No, because it was boring. The bombing there was boring. It was, compared to the type of strikes that were going on in and around Malta, where you got everything, where you really got, naval reconnaissance, naval strikes, torpedo strikes, level bombing. You had a much bigger mix, at least we felt, than what you had looking at Battle of Britain.
And 3 factions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And plus, you got to bring the Italians in. So part of the whole thing was being told, hey, the Italians are eventually coming out. At the time, Warlord had not put them on the schedule. So Andy slid us all the information under the table and said, hey, guys, help me out, make some cards. Reference back 20 minutes ago where I said I hate making cards. Yeah. So we made the whole card deck for the Italians, and made some aces and did some stuff to just kind of bridge the gap and say, all right, we know we're gonna have Airstrike come out. We know we don't necessarily have any new factions coming out, but let's do something to create some interest. Because let me be quite frank, there are elements inside, I'll call the broader Warlord community, not necessarily inside Warlord games itself, but the broader Warlord community that goes, why does anyone play Blood Red Skies? Is that game still out? Has it died yet? You know, and it's because they're narrowly focused in their one game, whether it be bolt action, whether it be Cruel Seas, they're in their small little piece of the world. And you go, no man, there's a lot of different Warlord games out there that have a lot of community support. So we kind of wanted to help feed that a little bit as well.
Yeah, well, I think Malta was a fascinating battle. By the way, the Italians did fly in the Battle of Britain.
Oh, okay, yes, so that is also true. But yeah.
But Malta's exciting. I know the one question you were asked a lot that got you mad, but no Gloucester Gladiators?
No, I hate biplanes. if I want to play biplanes, I go play a World War I game. I hate biplanes. So.
You do, don't you? So like
Doug can't cheat. He can't cheat with biplanes. They don't have you're missing tight turn and defensive tactics and aggressive tactics.
Didn't you have fairy swordfish? The spring
we pointed those out, and there's a scenario for Toronto that we did in there. That's great if you want to kiss your sister, as I said, but I don't fly biplanes.
You're not a fan, so you're anti-biplane.
I am anti-biplane. Now, you can bring biplanes to my games. You can play a CR-42 as the Italians. I'm not going to judge. You can even say you want to fly Gloucester Gladiators. I'm not going to judge.
As of today, there are no biplanes in the game, correct?
There are. So in Airstrike, Andy snuck in the biplane card. And the biplanes have not been released as official Warlord models yet.
Because Malta.
Yeah.
It's a Malta, yeah.
So what I expect we'll see is the first 2 biplanes will be the Gladiator and then the Italian CR-42.
That makes sense.
The models are already out there from Rockworks. So Rich Carlisle already has got some great 3D artists that have done models of both those biplanes. So if you have a hankering to fly biplanes, don't listen to me. Go out there, buy the biplanes from Rockworks. They'll ship them to the US if you're here. They ship them all over Europe. And they're nice resin 3D printed models that you can put with the cards that are in the ready room or on the Lead Pursuit website, and fly biplanes to your heart's content.
I'll build some biplanes. My Luftwaffe collection for Malta is nearly done, so I'll start on some Gladiators.
Brett, do you have for every aircraft that was actually there?
just about, yeah.
Because it's.
Yeah, I mean, I have aircraft that represent essentially every fighter and bomber squadron that was present.
Nothing wrong with that.
From the Luftwaffe, anyway.
My name is Mitch, and I got a problem. How much do you think you guys have kind of breathed some fire into the game, expanded it? And I'm talking the more technical stuff, writing stuff for the game, trying out new things that will be worked into the game, such as Malta.
I think we surprised a lot of people. I think going back to kind of the early stuff when Doug was working on scenarios, I was doing a bunch of the research and I was pumping Doug with the facts and figures and who was where, when, and all that. And he was compiling all that stuff and the interesting story behind it into actual gameable scenarios that are a lot like what you would see from, those things that Warlord produces every once in a while, those one-off things like we saw for D-Day and stuff like that. But this is like a series of them that all go together for Malta, right? Doug did all that, right? Doug put all that stuff in because he's the game designer guy, right? The rule guy that knows how to make that happen. I go, hey, check out this cool story. This guy did this, and there was this kind of, and I'm
like, no, you can't put 17 airplanes on the board at once.
Right. So he makes it legit. Right?
Well, you can.
Well, yeah, you can. We've done it, and it takes a while.
That's right. And then, then with the cards, not just the aircraft cards, but maybe even more so the ace cards. I think the ace cards, because the format Warlord Games uses for the ace cards, they tell a story, right?
Yes.
And I think they're meaningful. And you see these like ridiculous, crazy stories about these characters who were also aces who did amazing things. Anyway, all the research that went with that, I think all of that was sort of fuel that I think began to get a lot of attention early on. Because those were some of the earliest things we were chewing on as we started this endeavor. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but I think that got a lot of attention, not just from the community, but from Warlord Games. And it led to other things.
It did, but I think it took over a year to come full circle, because as soon as we said, hey, we want to make some ace cards, we thought about, well, what do you do with a stack of ace cards that you're sitting with at home? Who cares? We thought, well, when we go to Adepticon or go to some other game and event convention in our gaming, we want to hand out, play and take aces. Well, it took us until this fall to get to that point because of COVID.
Yeah. And we had big grand plans for Adepticon 2020.
Yeah,
I was supposed to be at Adepticon 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know where the motivation for that idea came from was our experience. You see how geeked out we are about Blood Red Skies, right? But our experience was pretty good. Yeah. So, but our entry level experience was so pedestrian. Like we 3 randos show up to the Warlord Games booth, like, hey, you guys got some like World War II thing, airplanes or whatever. And he's like, they don't have anything to show.
Back around.
Yeah. I mean, they have the box sets that you can buy and stuff, but they didn't have like a game table. What were they demoing on a small table? The MTB game.
Yeah, it was probably Cruel Seas.
Yeah. So they were. You could play that right there. So anyway, we see John for the first time. We're like, yeah. So we're kind of interested. You guys have like a World War II airplane game, right? He's like, yeah. Come back tonight, back here in like the shady back room or whatever, and we'll set up some tables and let you guys play and show you how it works, right? So we're like, cool, man, this is awesome. Like, and I'm a total noob to this whole. This is my first time to Adepticon and everything, right? So anyway, showing up, not knowing exactly what to expect. There's a bunch of guys hanging out, and they throw like a sheet on a table and bust out some like partially painted airplanes kind of scattered about. Like, okay, grab like 3 of those. Grab 3 of those. You go over there. You go over here. Okay, go. And walks us through a simple game. And that, as lame as that sounds, we're like, this is awesome. And we buy all the boxes and stuff, like filled our suitcases with airplanes and stuff. Anyway, our mission really was to really make that entry level experience for anybody else like us that might show up something that was amazing, right?
Well, you guys had some tough shoes to fill, because I think, and John won't listen to this because he's too busy. No, he will.
Dirty rat.
That John could breathe life into a dead game.
Yes. Yeah.
He really is.
That's why they call him the pusher. I mean, he is. Let me be honest. Is Gates Vantari's going anywhere? I don't know. But let me be honest. Anytime I hang out with him, I want to go buy more boxes.
Right. Oh, it's the same thing too with Stro Dog.
Yeah.
Just watching him demo it, I'm like, shit, that's it. I'm buying it.
Yeah.
And they have those starter box sets that you just can't say no to. But another game company said, how come we can't do this, and this? I said, you guys don't have a John Russell.
Yeah.
And I think that is all the difference, especially here in North America. Now, you guys, I would say, have carried that on.
Well, but
and it's interesting.
Let's be honest. Here's the deal. Most people probably don't know John's background, or they know his like early background as an Air Force guy, and then all of a sudden he's this Warlord guy. They don't know about all the time he spent working for Games Workshop, Forge World, going to conventions, being a demo guy, being an outrider. And that isn't something you pick up overnight. And so if you're a game designer and you think you're just going to get a couple teenagers who kind of think your game's cool, you send them some free stuff, they're going to go demo it for you, or get some college kids, and then it's going to generate the same pull, it's not. You need someone who is a experienced salesman, someone who truly enjoys the product and believes in the product. And then he suckers 3 knuckleheads like Chris Brett and myself into playing it, and we go, wow, this is actually fun, rather than just it's another game with plastic planes.
I'd say more than anything else, that's where all this came from, was just that idea of trying to make that just look super cool, right? And so we had all these ideas of like, oh, we'll have a Stalingrad table, we'll have a Battle of Britain table, we'll have this fantastic looking Malta table, and we're furiously painting planes with this idea that, you know, we're going to help John make this amazing, like legit event, if you will, whether it was just people walking up for the first time or interested in seeing the game, or like some like legitimate thing like, hey, come to Adepticon, we're going to play on these, you know, we were going to handle all that. Well, that's where all this has gone.
And you guys got to see it in July. How does the USS Hornet there look?
Amazing.
So giant.
Yeah. So for folks that don't know, he built a it's to the scale, yeah, of the USS Hornet. It's beautiful. You guys got to play on it.
We did, and I laughed. We tease him because it also sits on a fairly tall base, so it can have the ship sit there. We jokingly said it looks like the tsunami base that all the Victory at Sea miniatures are on. But anyway, it was amazing. Now it's a different size target than what we're used to playing. We don't play with 1-to-1 ships to airplanes. When Brent and Chris and I, when we all do our games, we play with smaller ships just for the sight picture and for some of the gamisms. But it was pretty darn cool when we were in Oklahoma, and you have a whole series of bombers flying straight at this carrier that takes up one whole side of the table.
It looked really cool. And speaking of the Hornet, so tomorrow, you know that they're going to come out and spoil everything for 2021, right?
Right.
So I don't know.
There better be, because I'm frustrated right now with their carrier choice. I'm like, really, guys, come on. But I think the politics of what gets released in initial waves are always, there's something cryptic that game players don't understand. Sometimes game designers don't even understand. They're made by the marketing and the bean counters. But I think from seeing what's coming out, there's a desire to roll back the timeline and to get some early to mid-era ships out there for the American fleet. So I think that'll be fun, because I think they kind of bracketed both ends. We've got early surface combatants and late carriers, and we're trying to get the two match up.
So coming up next, I believe that they're doing a heavy Pacific push.
Yes.
Are we allowed to say that?
So, I can tell you what it means for Blood Red Skies. I can conjecture as to what it means for Bolt Action and for some of the other games.
This is the Blood Red Skies a 2-hour show.
Yeah. So for Blood Red Skies, here's what I know. There are resin miniatures and a new starter set coming out. When is the new starter set coming out? I wouldn't dare put a bet on. And that's just because there's so many things. COVID has caused their production cycle to get off. COVID has caused their movement from their old facilities to the new facilities to take longer. They dog ate our homework. Got it. So I don't know when it's going to come out. But what I know is that in process with this is a transition to resin for the Kate bombers or Kate torpedo bombers, Vals to be released as resin bombers, U.S. early war to be released as resin bombers, and some of the metal fighters to make a transition. Some of the metals and plastic fighters. So Zeros will transition to having a resin variant, as well as Wildcats will go from metal to resin, which I think is really good overall. Would I rather see them all in hard plastic? Absolutely, but that costs a lot of money. But the resin, I think, is a reasonable compromise, and it's really setting the stage for some further releases for the Pacific, for the Hellcat to eventually be put out there. There's some argument / discussion as to what the next series of Japanese fighters and Japanese bombers are going to be. I'm pretty sure we can all guess that Betty is going to be their 2-engine bomber that gets picked, being as prolific as it was. But really, a lot of that will be somewhere in 2021. I would not want to really guess at a date, just because even if tomorrow everybody was in the new Warlord facility and they flip the switch, it's still going to take time to get things, procedures smoothed out and everything else. So
I think going to the Pacific is where they should have started the game. I think Battle of Britain's
British
cool.
company. They couldn't care less. Big picture.
I know.
When you come up to them and say, "What do you want to talk about?" Andy Chambers goes, "Man, I want to talk about my dad who was in the RAF," which is fine. For if you're going to sell that game in America, you're not going to sell a Battle of Britain box set to the average American. The average American gamer is going to go, "That's great. I really would like American aircraft at some point."
Well, I mean, I guess Battle of Britain is. Yeah, I guess it's a logical starting point no matter what. I wish they would have moved to different fronts faster, but it kind of wasn't how they were building and growing the game. They were just adding different nations, different countries, different types of aircraft. And you can see with Victory at Sea, they're starting in the Pacific.
Right.
Which, once again, what about the Bismarck and Hood and that whole thing?
We can sit here and we can pick apart Warlord's choice of release models and their release schedule till the end of the evening. But at the end of the day, I think there was a lot of disparate planning is the nicest way I can say it. People knew what models were ready and they knew what timelines they needed to work on. And there wasn't necessarily a step by step, hey, we're going to make all these things align so that where Blood Red Skies is, Victory at Sea plugs into immediately and it's matched with Cruel Seas. Even though we all talk about it now and say that the games all reflect each other, I'm not sure there was that level of synchronized planning. There was the level of, hey, I know which models are ready, which ones have, which masters are finished. Let's get those out and we get them done.
Why do you think air warfare holds like such an attraction for gamers and military enthusiasts?
Because all of you wish you were as cool as me and flew jets for your whole career. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I thinking out loud there?
Wait, hold on. Didn't the guy in front of you fly the airplane?
We're a crew. We work together. Unlike you guys in the Air Force, where you're a second-class citizen.
Let me ask you a question. When you look down right in front between your knees, was there a stick there that can maneuver the aircraft?
There's a nub. I can fly off the nub.
That's where he kept the latest issue of Jugs magazine.
Exactly.
Nobody, it's funny. I said the other day at work, this is where people are going to start listening to this thing. What happened to great old magazines like Jugs and Gent? And somebody just signed off as soon as
Oops. My bad. I'm sorry.
You know what it is? It's
can't take your bread anywhere. But anyway, back to the point of where is Warlord going with this? I think now there's a realization that okay, let's invest in that Pacific thought process, even though the game is still disjointed between Bolt Action and Blood Red Skies, because Bolt Action went to Marianas. Blood Red Skies went to Midway, and neither of the twin aircraft shall meet.
Yeah.
So there's some disjointed planning there, but I think the fact is it's going to build towards it. And once again, this is why the community is so awesome. Was it really takes someone thinking, and I'll use me as an example. Someone sitting there going, "Crap, Marianas came out. What airplanes do I need for Marianas?" Go through my quick order of battle search, wikipedia.org, and pull that up and go, oh crap, well, I need Hellcats, I'm going to need Vindicators, I'm going to need
Vindicators.
6 ends. Yes. Well, sorry.
Who was using Vindicators?
It was still one squadron.
Wait, let me guess.
One squadron.
It was a Marine Corps squadron, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was a Marine Corps squadron.
There you go.
There was this whole list of things, and I'm like, well, like only one of those is on our release schedule, which was Vindicators. I'm like, nothing plugs in. I need Avengers. I need B6 ends, so I need an upgraded B5 end which is faster. I need I'm trying to remember. There's one more aircraft type in there. But the point was, I suddenly had to look at it, and I turned around to Andy and go, Andy, can we have the stats for this? Absolutely. Okay. And that was before the master list came out. But hey, here's the stats for what we need. Let's go ahead and turn that around and make cards so people can play Blood Red Skies scenarios to go with their bolt action that they're doing.
Well, and they were using what, George's? What was their fighter?
Yes.
It was George's?
Yes.
Frank was after, right?
I always get those out of order. I believe so.
Because George had the radial engine, didn't it? Or Tony?
I'm getting this all wrong. Japanese.
It's funny.
Not my. I am terrible when it comes to Japanese airplanes. There's times I have to go out there and I go, I know the designation, I don't know the code name, or vice versa.
they gave him such nice names. You figured you'd remember which one was with. Like, what's a flanker?
I'm better with designators than names.
Yeah. Like, yeah. So, but no, I'm glad that they're going to that. I was really excited for the Jets. I thought the Korea for the Jets was fun. I still think it's fun. I have 15 of each. And they're U.S. and they're North Korean. I didn't do any Chinese. I should have.
Yeah.
No, actually, I did 5 Chinese. I think even that, the way they rolled that out, it changed the game a little bit. You had to use different tactics with Jet Age 1.
Right.
It's weird because I have not, other than playing with you with TTS and you guys are doing all that play testing. I don't even know where I put that box full of airplanes. So it's got to be somewhere. I'm going to go to Brett's house. I'm like, because he's not going to miss a couple of 109s.
Exactly.
He's going to go, where's G for George?
Yeah, exactly. Here's the funny thing about the jet rules. I think there's a lot of cool things that can be done with the MiG Alley rule set, and we did a lot in Tabletop Sim. We have not introduced a MiG Alley expansion for Tabletop Sim because once again, Warlord was like, nope, we really don't want to put the MiG Alley cards out there where we just put the main box set out. But the reality is it plays just as well in there. The models are all available. I think what we're going to see here in the next month or so is a release of a second, as we'll call it, a table in Tabletop Sim that will have all of the models out there on the advantage stands. So that way you can pivot the aircraft forward and back on a regular advantage stand, and you have as many aircraft models as we can pull from World War II through Korea, and we'll put some Vietnam models in there if you guys want to play with those. And we can release those because the models we have freeware, or we have them via a variety of other things that are already open source that are released. We can't release cards with all of them. So I think Tabletop Sim, you'll see it evolve a little bit to where the core components are there because they've allowed us to have those core components. The models are there that behave like Blood Red Skies models, but you'll have to import your own cards, or we'll have the master lists in there, so at least you have the stats. Worst case, you can type those stats into a note card in Tabletop Sim.
Do you think a lot of game companies are a little scared about if they have the game on TTS?
Well, there's two schools of thought. The one pure legal school of thought is if your IP is out there for free on Tabletop Sim, I can't license it exclusively to somebody else. Now, exclusive licenses are a funny thing. There are people who tell you that exclusive licenses are the dinosaurs of the last century, and that companies need to get over it and get around it. But there's a lot of companies that work that way. There's a lot of software companies that want the exclusive license for Aeronautica Imperialis in Games Workshop. But there's also a lot of companies that do great work out there that go, no, I don't need a exclusive license. I just need a commercial license so I can resell it. That being said, I think if you're not trying to go out and offer somebody exclusivity for another product, then companies should not be worried about Tabletop Sim. My experience, Brett's experience of a lot of people that we've talked to after they played Tabletop Sim is that the game just makes them want to go buy miniatures and paint miniatures and play with miniatures even more. That it's not a replacement. It helps you kind of feed the need to have done it in the near term, but then it brings up so many other things you want to try with it.
Game companies do not understand, I think, their own clientele. And Brett, I don't know if this applies to you, but Doug, you and I are rarities because we play board. At one time, we played board war games.
Right.
And I still do. Matter of fact, I got one from France today that I can't wait to play. I can understand board war game companies not wanting to do that. But when it comes to miniatures, we're also modelers. We're a little bit of painters. But there's a reason why we play miniatures over board war games, and it's for the experience of a con. Have you guys ever been to a board wargaming con?
I have not well, I'll say never, because the ones I went to, they also did miniatures gaming. I've never been at a pure board game con. I've had people describe them to me and they sound really boring.
Yeah. Essentially, it's, when you go to a miniatures con, it is like your head is drunk from all the sights, sounds,
Yeah.
and smells that you
Oh,
have
yes.
at those things. And it's like there's so many beautiful models. And then there's always games with puns. There was a guy at HMGS that has a game. It's called Up the Wazoo. It's ironclads on the Wazoo River. And I said, dude, that's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's a series. I go, I have 1 through 8. Yeah. So let's hope someone else is going to just drop off.
Someone's going to drop off.
But I'd say miniatures it's a different animal. I'm painting all my stuff, hoping that I live long enough for COVID to end so I could go out and play face to face.
Exactly.
I even went and played Star Wars Armada 2 weeks ago. That we're a different animal. We're more social, I think, than board war gamers. Going to a board war game convention, it's quieter. Because I did a podcast from a ASL convention. I was probably one of the youngest guys.
I was about to say you were youngest, and probably everybody else had their hearing aids in. So
yeah, I was also like in the best shape, but that's not saying much. But it's a different animal, and I think miniatures companies should really look into it.
Well, and I'll be honest, I think Games Workshop gets it. Now, Games Workshop also being a super large company, they also understand the value of their IP. I mean, why do you think we're all painting Primaris Marines now, so Space Marines? Because you can't, they're not just guardsmen, they are Astra Militarum, because it's something they can hold the IP to. But they, I think, understand that they need to be in a bunch of different streams, not just for revenue, but to keep people's excitement going. And that when you may not be able to physically release new models, having people go play a video game that has the same models, similar play styles, not necessarily the same game, but at least feeds the narrative, the story, the reason you're drawn into the game, then that makes them money in the end, because someone will go out and they'll play Dawn of War 2, 3, whatever number we're on. They'll go play that game, and then they'll be like, oh man, I've never had Tyrannid's Army. Maybe I want to have Tyrannid's Army now. And they'll go from something cool they saw in a video game, and they will incorporate that into their physical army.
That's a great point, because I can't tell you how many. So I've read like all 54 whatever Horus Heresy novels, and I can't tell you how many times I read one of those novels like, oh man, I gotta build that. Those Sisters of Silence and these guys. And so it's the exact same thing. It's just instead of a book or whatever, it's a game, some other outlet that motivates you to. I mean, that's what's happening to Steve. Steve never wanted to play any RAF stuff. He had no interest in it whatsoever. Now he's painting Spitfires and stuff like crazy, because that's what we play on TTS.
Games Workshop understands that historical companies don't, because historical companies believe there is a sanctity of history. No, it's game fluff. It's game lore. It doesn't matter. It is not the truth of history. Battle of Britain box set is not about telling the true story of how the Battle of Britain went on. It's about going out there and having Messerschmitts and Spitfires all spinning it up. And that's how you sell more miniatures, because people go, wow, I want to have another event where I've got, Boar Messerschmitts this time, or a different Messerschmitt, or I want Focke-Wulfs. And it's no different. It is functionally no different than me walking in and playing 30K at Adepticon and going, oh man, yeah, I like playing Imperial Fist, but dude, look at those guys with, whatever legion it is, salamanders, and I go, man, I could do 2 squads of those and come back next year.
So as soon as I am caught up on all my painting, which actually I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, at least until the Flames of War T80s and BMP3s come, the Team Yankee. Yeah. But I used TTS to try a Red Army.
Yes.
Because I have Canadians. I got a ton of Canadians with Polish paras and a bunch of tanks. But yeah, there's that point in time where I do demos like you guys. I'm going to have to put a red team. Obviously, it's going to be Germans. So I played around with a lot of different German lists. Because could it be here? Could it be Luftwaffe troops? Could it be SS? And I created my shopping list from that.
Right. Right.
that I am going to go buy.
Well, and let me put it to a more pointed thing that probably every one of us sitting here listening and or talking on the roundtable has experienced. How many of us have bought the cool new hotness of an army, gone out on the forums, read all the lists to build them up, painted up, and still got just crushed, like not once, not twice, but like for an entire weekend on the table. And you're like, well, that's awesome. I'm just going to put them back in the display case, and I'm not going to play Iron Hands now that they've been nerfed, you know. But the fact is, when you go out and you try these things in a digital realm like tabletop sim, it doesn't hurt near as bad when you are getting beat up, but you work out some of the kinks to where you either go, oh, now I know how to play that army, and I know what I exactly need to buy instead of everything. Or you then say, all right, maybe that isn't the army for me, because these, like in tabletop sim for Blood Red Skies, these airplanes aren't behaving the way I thought they would be. I thought they'd be heavy gunships, and guess what? They're just getting savaged because they're multi-engine aircraft. They're not, you know, P-38s aren't playing the way I want them to. I'm not going to go buy a P-38. Let me go find a different kind of aircraft that I think is cool. So I think companies can save some of the negative press that people always get, chasing the new hotness, buying it, playing it, getting crushed and going, this is the worst army ever. This is the worst airplane ever, you know?
Well, they can also get, I'd say, more eyes, and this is going back to what we talked about earlier. They could get more eyes on the development process.
Yeah, absolutely. Find the errors before you have to FAQ them. Hello Warlord Games, Hello Games Workshop, and all of you jerks out there.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big detractors, I think, with Cruel Seas was that it came out with an errata just after the game was released.
Well, let me pull the curtain back, guys. I mean, Warlord does not do the level of playtesting that some other companies do. They just don't. And love them, hate them. We can argue about it as much as we want. They don't go to the level certain other companies do. Now, what I'll say is, then there are companies that, like GW, that does an immense amount of playtesting but misses how broken an entire army is. And you go, did you play every army except that one? Because as soon as you released it, broke everyone else. So things are always going to slip through the play testing. But the thing you have to realize with Warlord is they're a thematic kind of company. They want you to enjoy buying the miniatures, painting the miniatures, having this big spread on the table, and they're like, yeah, if it's broken, we'll fix it. We're a miniatures company, you know. And so, but that
to me, that hurts a game, because when
does.
I go and
Cruel
I look at a
Seas
game,
is a great example. It crushed Cruel Seas. What could have been a really fun game that I think is still enjoyable once you get to the point of understanding what is broken, what isn't broken. If there's some units you just can't use. But Blood Red Skies has a bit of that. Brett and I laugh about it. I mean, the Tight Turn card is an overpowered card. It is extremely strong. And Brett jokingly calls it the cheater's card. But
just because I don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you don't get it.
I collect Luftwaffe.
Well, you have what? Great Climb?
Great Climb, Great Dive.
Yeah, still not as good.
Although it gives him his Blue Falcon list, so
that's right.
Allows him to defeat everybody else.
What does Blue Falcon mean?
I don't know what Blue Falcon means, but he's just the first word.
You know what's funny? I asked Alexa what a Blue Falcon is, and she told me, and then since then she will not tell me again.
That's awesome. Somehow it made it through the filter.
She goes, it is a friend that takes great delight in causing
taking advantage of you.
Yeah, and it's what does that stand for?
Yeah.
So, and now we have the Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Sam will give me the weather. He'll go to my wife. You look the F outside. Always cursing at her. Always cursing at her.
Awesome.
So I said, well, it saves me from doing it. Yeah, I think there's something about a quality game that they get off that kind of helps the community out. It's well understood. From yesterday talking to Uwe Eckert from Academy Games, and I said, well, he has a game about the space race. How long, did that take to develop? It's 2 years.
Yeah.
Blood Red Skies, John told us about it at Historicon. We saw a demo of it the next month at Gen Con, and the game is out in December.
Well, but the funny thing, what I will say is that the core game had been in work a long time. What hadn't been in work a long time was McGalley. What hadn't been in work,
Right.
most of the concepts of airstrike had been in work for a long time, but some of them were late ads. And he'll be the first to tell you that there's a point to saying, I'm gonna screw it up either way. I'm gonna break the game at some point. Let me at least put a best guess in there, and let's go forward with that and play it a little bit. If it isn't horribly broken at the beginning, I got to trust gamers who are playing this game to not be power gamers. Now, I come from the U.S. gaming scene where I'm like, isn't every player a power gamer? Or are we all that way? But
No.
no, and not especially for a lot of historical stuff in the UK. They're not power gamers. There's not near as much competitive play as we would have. So to each his own. I just prefer a well beaten up project by the time it gets delivered to everybody.
I'll tell you what, if you want to see if your game is F proof, go play it in Russia. Those guys power game. They do. For guys that I know that go and play in some of the European tournaments, they take a different tack to a game.
Yeah.
They're not into the history of the game at all, but they know where the game is broken, and they know how to manipulate that. They're very good at that.
Yeah, and well, let's be honest. That's why we have, even in board games, such a variety of styles. You've got very much American slugfest kind of board games. You've got Euro style games. You've got variants of that with cards to remove some of the Euro softness to it. There's a variety of ways that things have been done, but at the end of the day, those are there because the play styles are so different around the world. I mean, I was surprised just playing Blood Red Skies and X-Wing in Malaysia and Singapore, that the game play style was different there. And it was really different to demo a game there because they weren't gamers first, they were modelers first.
Right.
And so it was kind of funny. So they were surprised I showed up to demo a game without fully painted miniatures and everything. I'm like,
oh, you were the guy.
I'm leaving it for you guys to paint. That's why I'm, and they laughed. They're like, yeah, leave it here. And I don't know if we're going to paint it or if Ian's going to paint it or who's going to paint it, but someone's going to paint it here soon. But yeah, it was just their expectations were different and their way of doing things. Even when they demoed a game to me, it was different because it was their style of gaming. So
yeah, I know from playing even Bolt Action in Asia, they play on looks like pool tables.
Yes,
and they're wondering why, like, oh, it's like a slugfest. I'm like, yeah, well, there's no terrain, guys. It's weird because they live in a part of the world that has dense terrain, but not in their games.
Yeah.
It's so odd. I can't explain it. But yeah, I think TTS brings more than I think a lot of companies realize. And I'm not going to tip my hat on which game company I sent a kind of a point paper to about this will grow the game. Even if it wasn't for COVID, this can grow the game. And I said, I hate to tell you, it's already out there. People have totally taken everything, all of your IP, and they've put it out there. They just change because it's a German World War II squad is unfortunately can't copyright that.
Yeah.
But it's all out there, and I think you guys would benefit from that because you would get players that would try it out. But well, what happens if they just want to play that? I go, as much as I've enjoyed playing on TTS, I cannot wait to get out there and play again.
Well, there's a counterpoint about the IP as well. So I have lost this discussion more times than I care to admit. But there's a misunderstanding of the value of the intellectual property of a card. Let's use an aircraft card from Blood Red Skies. Let's use one that just came out. Let's say, all right, the F9F Panther, that card is the intellectual property we want to talk about. People would say, well, why not put it into tabletop sim? And I agree. Warlord ought to say immediately as soon as it releases, or even pre-release, hello, if you want to sell more models, here you go, put it into the game. Because I can go view that card on their website in a much reduced, not a full resolution, but in much reduced. But if I wanted just to print one and put it in the sleeve and play with someone else's airplanes as F9Fs, then I can do that off what's already on the Warlord site. There's nothing that prevents me from doing that.
Right.
So whether it's a high enough resolution card to be in a 3D game or the low res card they use to sell the model, it doesn't matter. The information is out there. So if the info is already out there, use it to enable people to come to you for more product. Right. I hate to use it as kind of a drug dealer kind of methodology, but it really is. Take what you have that is of value, that IP, and spend it wisely in the sense of put it in tabletop sim so people will see that you as a company are a good steward of your own information. You say, all right, we want you to play with this, try them out, see how you like them. Hopefully you're going to buy a box of 4. Maybe you'll buy 2 boxes of 4. And I think that would grow the community more if companies could understand the value of their IP. Too many times it's viewed as something that has to be kept under lock and key. It's kind of like in business when people think about assets versus obligations, and they go, look at all these assets I have. I've got a multi-million-dollar company. Not if no one's buying your stuff.
Yeah.
Glad you have all that stock.
I don't know who cornered me one time, because one thing we do at No Dice, No Glories, we study the hobby from a developer marketing standpoint too. Right. We really like that. And we have good relationships, I think, with a lot of developers where, and it's, if they'll call, when they call, I just give them the information. Yeah. But one of the things I told somebody is, if you can combine something that everybody carries around into your game, you will be on to something. And I mentioned it to somebody, and I was asked later on, did Fantasy Flight ask you the same question? I said, no. And they go, to play X-Wing, you need to have an app.
And they screwed it up, and they punted it. So why do you think there's now third-party apps that have all that same data? Because they punted the ability, and I'll be honest, I haven't looked at Dust 1947 recently. They really punted it about a month ago when they took out a lot of the units. And they were doing it for the right reason. They were trying to downsize, make everything easier for people to see. But they took out all the what were known as dustified units. So they were all the World War II things that were then brought into this high-tech, carrying phasers, lasers, plasmas, whatever. They took all those out of the app. And everyone said, I play with the app. I don't play with the cards because the cards are out of date from the moment you publish them.
Right.
I play with the app. So we took it out of the app. You've just made me not want to play the game. And I think companies have to understand what they're committing to. They have to commit to it and have the IT backbone to keep people on staff that are updating. It's like social media. I mean, you can always hire your cousin for a week to redo your Facebook presence and Instagram. But if you don't hire somebody who knows social media to maintain it, it's not going to be of any use to the rest of the community. And the digital piece of that, I think, is the same way.
Yeah, there's something about, when I said, well, some of our players don't really like, using this technology. I go, really? Because I have them register their list, electronically. They understand it pretty damn well.
If it becomes useful, people will use it. I mean, let's be honest, my 70-plus-year-old stepmom still uses Google Maps. She may not be the wizard at finding, that the best sushi restaurant in a 3-block area via Google Maps, but she uses Google Maps and uses it for baseline, functionality. You make a tool that's useful, people will use it.
Yeah. And, everybody has these damn phones, but I think the first one to take and really combine all that technology, and it's really sad that FFG really kind of screwed that up.
I was so happy when they did it and then so disappointed.
And, especially like when you have, what is something gamers do all the damn time?
I pick my nose. Oh, that wasn't the answer.
Yeah, you guys do that. Yes. No, I mean, they build lists.
Make lists. Yep.
And I can't tell you when it was free. Well, it's still free for Bolt Action. I go on that all the time if I'm trying to go to sleep. I dig that. There's something about that because I'm involved in the game. You're getting me more involved in the game, the more media conduits you're giving me.
Well, and let's be honest, that's why for 40K I always bought the enhanced edition codices, was because they came with the force list generator. Now it became quickly out of date, never plugged in with other armies and other things, and I know they've gone a whole new way now. But in 8th edition, I bought those because I could quickly build a list on my tablet, look at it for basic validity, and it was something useful. And it kept me thinking about, well, what's the next model I need to buy? What part of my acquisition plan is to change this list that I think is an okay list, but I really want it to be a better power list. I need to go buy more bikes, more speeders, more whatever. I am optimistic that we will get there with Warlord for Blood Red Skies next year. I thought it was going to be sooner, but because all the numbers and all the point values and everything are already out there, I think you will see, under the auspices of the Warlord competitive side, a online list building capability for Blood Red Skies.
Really?
Yes.
With cards, with the cards.
Don't know if the cards will be in the first wave of it, because only equipment cards carry a point value. And so right now we've been concentrating on, for competitive, it's what you have to report. And so I have to report, at least in the US way of building your list, I have to report my my aircraft mix and my equipment cards, and the others I can pick as I come up to the table. So we'll see how that goes.
There's a lot to be excited about. I think there's a lot to be excited about.
Well, I think there is. I think we'll see in the next couple months, once Warlord gets their feet back under them after the move, the release schedule will pick back up. I think. I'll be honest. I've seen jets, Korea era jets, have already shown up in the U.S. for people who ordered them. Not for me, apparently. Fell to the bottom of the of the food chain again, but that's all right. So the things will start ramping up. So I think 2021 is going to be a good year. There's going to be a lot of unknowns. There's going to be a lot of timeline unknowns, but the will to release is there from Warlord, and the will to expand the game is there from Warlord, which is
what are you guys most excited about for next year?
Not playing in person again, not having to smell Brett's stinky feet. Oh, I'm sorry. Once again, I'm thinking out loud there. Brett, what are you most excited about for next year?
I'm maybe a little apprehensive, maybe kind of nervous about Pacific stuff, because I don't know anything about it, and I know I have a ass ton of stuff to paint when that happens. So maybe that's what's on my mind most for what's coming.
So I'm going to take it as a paid political advertisement here. What am I most excited about next year? Lead Pursuit releasing a lot of cool stuff to make your Blood Red Skies game better.
Yeah, I was going to get to the merch that you guys have.
Yeah, so.
Oh, by the way, I would talk about it more. Well, actually, no, you guys sent me some of the stuff, and I thank you guys so much for it.
If I had a set of foam, I'd send you a set of foam, but we're making some final changes to the foam that came up at the last second. So let me talk about that. The big things I think are a US-based customized foam capability. So you don't have to go to Just Lasered in the UK, who, by the way, they're awesome. Mel out there does some awesome work, but it's in the UK. Shipping kind of gets to be expensive getting it over here, and it's something that we can source here and source it pretty well. So Lead Pursuit in the next year is going to get into doing the custom foams for what we call a 6+1, which is a squadron and an ace kit that's in a little 6x12 piece of foam, 1 inch thick with a hard bottom, and 12x12. So big 12x12 sheets for people like Brett who have lots of airplanes and lots of the same airplane. You can customize it to whatever you want, but it's a 12x12 by 1 inch sheet of foam to mass hold your aircraft. And with those, we also have 12x12 boxes. They're 12x12 by 4 inches, basically to fit 3 sets of aircraft foams in, a set of rule books, your templates, those things in there to have kind of a 12x12 carrying case. Because the problem is, for those of us that have starter sets, we bought foam for them, so they're very specific, or they become a grab bag and you just kind of throw everything in. So we as Lead Pursuit said, look, man, I'm tired of my planes getting beat up. I'm tired of the John Russell priority mailbox full of styrofoam noodles with airplanes thrown into it. We need a better way to do that without going to an extremely expensive one, because we all know the gold standard. We'll name names. Battle Foam is awesome. Battle Foam doesn't do great customized aircraft ones. They have a lot of other cool stuff. So we said, let's find that niche market and let's do some foam there. And we're still releasing tokens, movement templates, shooting templates, 3D flak markers. We'll always come up with creative stuff like that. I can tell you for the Pacific, We'll probably have acrylic ship bases, acrylic ship cutouts, maybe even MDF ship cutouts, depending how crazy things get. There's been some pretty cool ones we're looking to work with out there. So.
And where is your store set up?
It's tough to find. It's crazy. You go to leadpursuit, all one word, .net/store.
Oh wait, you were being sarcastic.
I am being sarcastic.
Gotcha.
Leadpursuit.net. And if you really can't find it that way, when you open up your Facebook app and you're sitting there in the morning, going through everything on Facebook, type in Lead Pursuit and it'll bring it to the page. There's a link to the store. It'll take you right in there. And you can find all kinds of Blood Red Skies goodness. If we don't have it and you want it, shoot us an email. That's really easy as well. So Doug@leadpursuit.net gets you right to my inbox, and you can harass me and ping on me. Or as most of the people who I've seen down in the seats tonight, most of you have interacted with us either on Facebook or Instagram. Go out there and send us a message or reply to one of our posts about whatever episode has come out and say, hey man, that was a cool episode, but where the heck are my markers for airstrike, or whatever you want, and we'll generate some of that.
So isn't there some other secret squirrel stuff out there?
I don't know what other secret squirrel stuff's out there. Why don't you spill the beans?
No, I don't want to give it away. I don't know if we could talk about it yet.
Well, I'm looking at here. So we went off script a while ago, but we kind of hit everything.
Is there a script?
Well, you send it to me, but Nam.
I don't know what to say because I can't give you a timeline.
Okay.
I will tell everybody that for Vietnam, we went back to the drawing board. And it was all based on Andy. And it's not a negative thing about Andy. We missed Andy's guidance. We ran for about 4 months in the wrong direction. And we presented him with a product. They said, nope, that's not what I asked for, guys.
I would just put it like this. You guys are working on Vietnam.
Yeah. It's when Vietnam comes out, it will be good. It will be right. It will be an Andy Chambers product. So it will not be Doug Glover's favorite rules, John Russell's favorite rules. It's going to be an Andy product. So it's going to fit in with his view of how simplified and how the game will flow. It won't be a bunch of charts, a bunch of wizzo knowledge that we're trying to reduce to die rolls out there.
And the reason why I say this is because I brought Blood Red Skies with me to Historicon last year, and I demoed it. First question you get asked, what about Nam? I said, what about Nam? I wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's how many Vietnam vets take the screw in the light bulb?
I don't know.
You don't know because you weren't there.
Yeah, exactly.
But everybody automatically asks, no, Vietnam. And I'm like, for a game that's for a period, it's very underrepresented in the wargaming community, such as Korea. Right away, you want to know about Nam. I just think getting the word out there that it is being looked at. We don't know when it's going to come out, but that you guys are on it.
We are, and the team is super devoted to getting it right. Now,
yes, it is.
That is part of the problem. But I think it's also a strength of the team is that everyone on the U.S. playtest team that's working towards providing Andy with a workable rules starting point wants to make sure that it's consistent, that it works with airstrike, that it works with all the jet rules, that it is an evolution in capability, and that it doesn't cause you to break Blood Red Skies. Are we going to suggest that you play Spitfires versus F4s? No, we're not. But it's going to be
that'd be really. How about Tomcats against Zeros?
Against Zeros. So I jokingly say that whether we want a rule set where you could do that, but you're not going to play it competitively. And so I think the team has worked well towards getting to that goal. There's been a lot of internal arguments. There's been a lot of internal disagreement. There's been people throwing their hands up and saying we can never get there from here. But once again, that's the dynamics of a committee.
But there's a lot to crunch too. I mean, you think about some of the capabilities of the weapon systems. So I can tell you, in the stuff that I got to play, it was fun and familiar, but obviously an evolution.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're going back to start. I don't know if starting over that's probably too strong, but it's being reworked only means it's going to be even better than that. And I can tell you, it was a lot of fun, and I was ready to play that. I thought that was good. I mean,
I'll admit I played it, and every once in a while I'll go up and I'll check it out again. I think it's amazing. Um, I am. Don't take this the wrong way, but I think when it comes out, you're going to have all these folks that have predisposed prejudices of what Jet Age combat was all about.
People are
And
going to be disappointed. Let me manage expectations.
yeah,
People are going to be disappointed because it doesn't feel the way they want it to. And that was the toughest, and that's where we missed the mark with Andy. So let me be perfectly honest here. That's where we missed the mark with Andy, was he said, guys, it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like a history lesson. And so we said, okay, got it. We understand. You don't want perfectly accurate missile probabilities, that we get crunched down to the right die roll odds. You don't want those things. You want something that's going to be fun, gives you the feeling of air combat with missiles, with low altitude dogfights over rugged terrain. Got it. So that's where we went back to, change some core mechanics. And the nice thing is, once we established those core mechanics, whether or not you felt they were accurate, it doesn't matter. It's still fun. Because as you saw, when we were playing at one point, as you're wrangling through these mechanics, you get to a point and it's not fun. You're like, I don't care how far we go down that road. If it isn't fun, that mechanic shouldn't be put in there.
right.
We need to make sure that the enjoyment of the game is still there. And it's obviously it's an iterative process. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort.
Yeah, look, and I, not to be a dick, but I'm like, well, how much time do you have in multi-engine high performance multi-engine jets? Well, I don't have any. It's like I'm not going to tell an astronaut. And that's the interesting thing I think gamers have. It's and I've seen this, and it's hilarious. Like, gamers have a notion of certain things that other people have firsthand experience of, that there's just incongruency there. That's funny.
And that's you couldn't have said it any better. The incongruency between their vision of how things work versus how they really work is one of the core problems with any war game that has ever been written. People either write it to be super realistic, or they write it to fit somebody's mental view of how the conflict went. And realistically, you should be starting with, let me make something fun. Let me make something people enjoy doing. And if the output of it needs to be a simulation, then there needs to be some more add-on and complexity and granularity. But if the outcome is make something fun that feels, smells, tastes like Vietnam air combat, who cares if it's not the most accurate missile odds? Guess what? You want people to enjoy the game. Your sparrows are going to have to work more often than they worked in the Vietnam War. Otherwise, it's not going to be that much fun of a game.
Right.
15% missile hits aren't going to be a fun game.
So what are we telling you guys out there? That the game's going to be good, but it's, you should always show up to play a game to have fun. Anything else to me is gravy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we say this, but it's not exactly what a lot of gamers believe nor want.
Well, and I'll also say this about the timeline. I don't think it'll be a 2021 release, which is a good thing for me. Buys me a little bit more time and breathing room. I know a lot of people are excited about it. What I would say is, if you are excited about Vietnam rules, first of all, comment in the ready room. Let Andy know that. And Andy is not opposed to, once he has stamped rules as final, putting them out in a forum like that, like he did with Airstrike. He released the rules for flak. He released the rules for torpedo bombing. All those well prior to Airstrike ever coming out. Once he feels he gets it to that, final playtest result where he's willing to put it out to a wider audience and go, okay, we've played this and we think we have a good system. Please, everybody else, poke a hole in it. The more you clamor for it, the sooner it will get to that point. That won't make it get released by Warlord any sooner. Their release schedule is still something else, but that will get you something playable in your hands via the Ready Room, the Bloodless Guys Ready Room on Facebook.
Yeah, which is something else you guys should definitely plug. Well, look, believe it or not, we're almost at the end of 2 hours, and not a question was asked. So you said that
I
these
blame
guys...
Phil. Phil always has questions on Instagram for me, but he's apparently being shy.
And Peter and Frank are your regulars too, right? Are they also your regulars?
He goes, I'm saving it for John tomorrow. Nice. Good. Put him on the spot because he has no plausible deniability. He has
so let me just give you. I mean, Phil, you went to John's last one, right? Or you've seen the video of it. One is let's see if we could get him something to say something I have to cut out later.
Let's not.
Let's not do that. But John, if he's given a little, you know it is. It's
the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's hard to rape the willing. John, you could definitely Jedi mind trick. He will say it, and it's just because could you see the on the video everybody else's faces from England and everywhere else? Because they were like, I can't believe John. Like I wanted to spill that one, not him. But yeah, I'm saving him for John tomorrow or Andy. Yep. I'll be on that with Troy, and that's tomorrow morning.
Well, and I'll tell you guys, be on there when Andy speaks because Andy is the worst leaker of anybody. I sat on Vietnam for a while, and then he rolls out into an interview and goes, "Hey, we're going to do this Blood Red Skies Vietnam," and I'm like, "Oh, really? We are? I can now talk about that." So,
but that's good, and I'll tell you why.
Happy he leaks.
Well, it's because they're excited about the game. Exactly. So you saw the email of all the stuff they're going to talk about tomorrow, and they're spoiling all of 2021.
Yep.
They're trying to gen up excitement. Not to be outdone, Plastic Soldier Company asked for 4 hours on Sunday. And they're talking about games that have not even, somebody asked me, what is this NOM 68 game? And I said, I cut and pasted it. I didn't even know what you're talking about. And I'm like, you guys are coming out with a Vietnam land game at 10 millimeter? Really? So there's a lot of spoilers this week. I kind of have to promote, but
Mitch, thanks for having us on, man.
Thank you, guys. Well, every time you and I get on the same cast, it's magic. You too, Brett. Yeah,
it's the Ranger panties.
Yeah, Brett just sits there, shakes his head, and goes,
I'm not saying it was Ranger panties, but Ranger panties.
Exactly.
I tell you what scares me about Brett. He doesn't blink that much.
Yeah. Or steely-eyed killers.
Yeah, it's like ooh. But yeah, I appreciate it. I definitely wanted to make sure you guys had 2 hours. We didn't stay on script, but I think we talked about a lot of things. We got a couple minutes left. You guys are diehard gamers. Give me some. I asked you what you guys are excited about for next year, and it's a hard question to ask, but if you guys were king for a day, what would you like to see come out that has not been gamed well, or is not popular because a lot of people don't know about it?
Throw it to Brett first because I know exactly what my answer is.
It's our one good question we ask per show.
So I kind of, I like Luftwaffe. I think I made that clear, and I'd really like to see I could see a box set for Defense of the Reich maybe, and the aircraft that could come from that. Beyond that, there's some particular aircraft I'd love to see just because I think they're cool. And that's kind of where my motivation for all this starts anyway.
What are they?
Black Widow would probably be at the top of the list.
The 61, right?
Yeah. And, about, even like B-25s. I mean, I know B-25s are available out there, but I'd like to see stuff like that.
I would love to see B-25s.
Yeah.
What about, do you guys remember, because we're all around the same age, there was a video game called The Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So Weird War stuff would be fantastic. I think there might be a lot of resistance to that, but I'm a big advocate for that as an idea to take this and apply some kind of Weird War thing to it.
Now that stuff is out there or is coming, but it may not be. I think they're going to put a limit on it. It's not going to be truly, as they call them, paper panzers. It's going to be things that actually flew, or had a prototype that flew, or were pretty close to flying, at least for Blood Red Skies. Bolt action made
DO 335. That'd be sweet.
What was the one where the pilot was prone? I couldn't think of it because we were trying to think of the HO 229 flying.
229, but yeah, that wouldn't have been it. I cannot.
But there was one where the pilot was prone.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that is not a fun way to fly.
No, that was not. That engineer never had any flight time.
Yeah, because it's like body dynamics and pulling G's, it's not good.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to think of, but yeah, I'll figure out what it is like at 2:00 in the morning. So I'll give you guys a call in the middle. Yeah. And Brett, you never played the old Avalon Hill game Luftwaffe, have you? You would enjoy that.
All right.
because it was a fun game. I don't even know where you can find that even now.
Well, so I'll make the plug. 8th Air Force, 20th Air Force, the episode we just released today. Really, the designer there talked about Bob.
You're talking about the Kickstarter game.
Yeah, he talked about that. He built it from some of the lessons learned from Luftwaffe. That, hey man, that was a fun game to play, but I'd rather it be simplify some things, fix some game mechanics. And so
did that Kickstarter end yet?
Monday. It ends Monday at 10. So what I'll say is that it's a reasonable price, especially for 2 games. Do you know what the game system is all about? Not necessarily. Do you know the quality of the materials? Well, you can look at it and kind of gauge. To me, it falls right in every other game pricing regime that we go for. So it was enough that there was enough information out there. I said, what the heck? Let me try it. I'll have fun.
Did you back it?
I did. So I backed it pretty much as soon as I ran across it.
Yeah, I saw it, and I think it was the price that scared me away a little bit with that. Not a lot out there, but you said you've spoken to the guy.
We did. So we interviewed him today, and let's be honest, he's kind of a newbie to the whole Kickstarter game release, and he didn't have someone to mentor him to say, here's the early release videos you need to do. Here's how you build the interest. He got the money to back the project. In fact, he backed it with a lot of his own money because he's like, I believe enough in releasing this game. I'm going to make sure that the production is behind it. But I really want to see the mechanic, and that's really was going to lead into my point of what I want to see next year. Is I want to see an air campaign game that's about modern air campaigns, that isn't Dan Verson games Fantasyland over here, and isn't Red Storm NATO Air Commander picking the individual desired mean point of impact of the target. I want something in between that's a modern air combat campaign.
I'm surprised you said desired mean point of impact. I've
Well,
never heard
desired
anybody
point of impact now. I was just being an old
yeah.
man. So.
I just Dimpy is yeah, I like this game. There are some really good air campaign games that are on computer, but it's helmet fire.
Yeah,
because once you set an ATO, you're not flying the planes. It gets
funny you say it, because that's exactly the point he makes for 8th Air Force and 20th Air Force. Is you write the plan, but as soon as those aircraft leave and start their move, the plan is written. You're not influencing the individual moves of those bombers and those fighters.
When is that podcast coming out?
It's out. It just hit this morning. So see, you don't even follow my podcast anymore.
No, dude. Look, I was at work at 7, and then I came home, ate dinner, listened to Liz, who was before you guys with the guys from Georgetown, and then bam, I'm here. So I didn't have time, but I'll tell you what. I'll listen to it tonight as I go to sleep. And the guy's name is Robert Fanouf.
Yep.
It reminds me of every time I see Dion Phaneuf.
Phaneuf. So he says it's like Braniff, but with a PH. So.
Oh, so he doesn't say it the French Canadian way? Yeah. Dion Phaneuf, people used to scream, suck it, Phaneuf. It's a long story. It's a long story. But is that what you want to see for next year?
I'd like to see a modern, something modern like that, because I'm enjoying the tactical games, and tactical games have been done until they're blue in the face. I think people haven't done I don't want to say operational. Yeah, I guess it's operational because it's not strategic. They haven't done an operational game well. Red Storm fun, Red Storm complex, and not solitaire.
I swear to you, the next time I see you, I'm going to can show you. You can look that up on your own. Yeah, I'd like to see that too. Do you know why I would like to see that? Because that's what I do for work. And we are. If I could complain, we are not close.
Yeah.
Because and I was complaining to earlier today, but this colonel that's running the blue team, and I like him. He's a really smart guy, but he's like, well, you don't expect me to plan to strike 10,000 targets. And I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of do. Yeah, I would love to see that too. But I may have something for you in the next couple of months, because there's people working on that.
Excellent.
Yeah, with the whole MDC2 concept going on, but I don't know. Yeah, who wants to talk about work? But anyway, gents, once again, it's a pleasure all mine. Check out Lead Pursuit Podcast. Even if you guys are iffy about the game, just hearing how excited these guys are about it, to me, I wouldn't say they saved the game, but these guys are responsible why the game's still being played. I know Brett's like, he's not smiling, but he's like,
dude, I paint little airplanes.
because this guy's bullshitting us. No, I'm not. I think that the reason why the game's popular and people are still playing it. And I've gone to people when I see play, I go, hey, so, how'd you get into it? Right away, they tell me about Lead Pursuit. And I said, those guys, they're not my kind of guys, but,
they're squared away guys. They're awesome.
They're not my cup of tea. No, but I think you guys have breathed some life into a game that easily could have gone away. I think that a lot of the intellectual equity that you've thrown in the game, I think, has made it a lot better. I recommend everybody to check out your podcast, check out your store, and you have a happy hour. Is it every Friday? Is it
Generally every Friday, about 4 p.m. Eastern, give or take, depending on schedules.
And you get a good 8 or 9. You get more people at those than you do at this talk.
Oh yeah, which is what's funny. I mean, you get a bunch of people to sit around, just BS and drink. Then it's a good time.
It's a fast hour. It's a fast hour. I'm always surprised. Like we end up talking about who knows what. Next thing you know, like, all right, guys, well, go have a great weekend because we burned through an hour and I'm kind of drunk right now.
Yeah. So I did make a mistake when we marketed this one. I said, well, we were so good at getting things up on YouTube that day that people's like, I'll just catch the YouTube. It's like I'm the Hopper from Dish for all these war games.
Exactly. Victim of your own success.
Right, but it'll be up either later tonight or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. But once again, boys, thank you, and Thanks, then maybe I'll see you at Mythicos.
Hopefully, except wait, it's cold. I'm not going to be up there. It's cold. We'll see a Lead Pursuit guy. You see Steve.
So you're going in December, and you're not going.
I'm not going. I'm not Steve. I'm sending Steve to set that one up. So.
All right. Okay. Well, he lives.
Thanks,
up there,
Frank.
right?
Thanks for showing up. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I will stop the recording. But hey, catch some more great episodes of the Roundtable from HMGS.
Absolutely.
Stop recording.